dangerous Hurricane Irene continues to pound the northern Bahamas. Abaco Island, the eyes crossed over and is now headed towards the Gulf Stream and the eastern seaboard of the United States. When we look at the entire country as a whole, clearly Irene is a monster hurricane bearing down on the United States as the sun begins to set. There you can see the eye as it continues to get closer and closer now. It's going to eventually keep that northward motion, then turn northeast, making landfall somewhere between Cape Hatteras and Wilmington, most likely, and then crossing the state heading up. And from there is a little uncertain right now. Anywhere from the Delmarva Peninsula all the way into New Jersey, all the way up to Maine are most at risk, and right now it appears likely that whatever track Irene eventually takes, these areas will all feel significant impact. You can see Hurricane Irene is a large and dangerous major hurricane bearing down on the United States of America. Now, as of 5 p.m. Eastern Time, the center of Hurricane Irene was at 27.0 north, 77.3 west. It's still a Category 3, although it may have weakened a bit. It's probably a Category 2, but it appears to be re-intensifying, so strengthening is forecast, gusting to 140. It's moving north-northwest at about 13 miles an hour, 950 millibars, and you can see the track here through time. This looks rather broad, but it's not all that unlikely that it will begin that northward turn over the next, say, 10 to 12 hours, and then north-northeast by the time it makes landfall, sometime, say, Saturday morning, afternoon, and then begin to accelerate, but not that quickly. We're still talking 24 hours. It would pound North Carolina, scrape up Virginia, into New Jersey by Sunday, and then into Long Island and out. But by that time, we're talking about it still being a Category 1 hurricane over New Jersey. This is a very, very dangerous storm, I can tell you that right now. And for that very reason, we have, of course, tropical storm warnings from the Florida coastline all the way to North Carolina, and we have hurricane warnings for most of the North Carolina coast, including the Outer Banks, hurricane watches for areas all the way up to Sandy Hook, New Jersey. This will all be extended north and east, and it will be upgraded to hurricane warnings as Irene makes her move closer to land. You can see the wind field. This was the wind field this time yesterday, and you can see it's greatly expanded, and it might only get larger through time. So the hurricane force winds that extend out this far already will likely extend out even farther as it makes its way on off towards the north and east. And obviously the model guidance since yesterday has shifted a bit west, and this is very, very concerning because you could see yesterday the models were saying, hey, this thing might impact North Carolina, but maybe barely, and start to move east well before it gets to, say, New Jersey or New York. And you can see the models today are in much better agreement that even if it somehow missed North Carolina, it's still going to continue into New England. And so the threat now will shift after landfall, especially from North Carolina into areas of Delaware, New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, even Maine. There is the opportunity, actually, for Irene to make landfall in North Carolina, then make landfall in New Jersey, then New York, and then come back offshore and make another landfall in Maine. I mean, this is a historic hurricane. If this thing really gets going like that, we're talking about a lot of devastation. Here you can see the visible as the sun starts to go down, and notice at the end, the bubbling around the eye, that's the eye wall rebuilding itself, and it appears as though it's trying to intensify. It did move over Abaco, and I think that kind of had an impact, but you can see as the sun goes down, the bubbling, that should lead to some intensification, although it might be a Category 2 right now. Wouldn't be surprising if it jumps back up to at least 120. You can see the radar there out of Melbourne. Look at that. You could clearly see the eye, that motion off to the north-northwest, and see how it's building, even though it's long range. Clearly a much better defined eye than we had even a few hours ago, and that is very, very concerning because you don't want it strengthening over the Gulf Stream, because even if it weakens, the energy it builds up will smash ashore for the coastline. There's a close-up of the Melbourne eye, and you can clearly see, as I mentioned, a very well-organized major hurricane that raked through the Bahamas and is now moving north-northwest, eventually to the north towards the Carolina coastline. Not good news at all. You can see upper level winds are not all that favorable anymore. We have high pressure and anticyclone down here over Cuba, and that's pushing wind shear into the system, but it still has that outflow pattern that is much better defined than it was, say, 2 days ago. And that's what's been able to keep it so strong, and it's such a large hurricane that no matter what the intensity, even if it were to come ashore up in New Jersey as a Category 1, we'd be talking about a very, very nasty situation. And here's why. Storm surge. Remember, it's not wind that kills people, it's water. And when we look at the threat, and this is for a Category 2, as Irene's making her way up, if she has that forward momentum and winds anywhere between 80 and 110, if a Category 3 in North Carolina is expanding, it's weakening, it's a mess, it's going to be accelerating. Look at these storm surges in here. You could have storm surge up to 12 feet along the New Jersey coastline. Cape May, Atlantic City, Absecon, Toms River, up into New York, those storm surge amounts increase. So if Irene somehow decides to take a track much, much, say, further to the east than what we were seeing, then you're talking about storm surge coming up into New York, into these little harbors in here, causing a lot of damage. And that's going to be a big, big problem as Hurricane Irene moves off towards the northeast after landfall. And again, look at here, Philadelphia. I mean, come on, we're talking big cities here getting an impact from this dangerous storm. I did want to note we do have TD10 winds 35 is way out there at 13.8, 32.4. The chances that this ever gets towards land are very, very slim. You can see it is forecast to become Tropical Storm Jose and then weaken. But remember, in 2005, we had another TD10 that was forecast to become Tropical Storm Jose and weaken and move northwest, and it ended up becoming Tropical Storm Katrina in the Bahamas. So you always have to watch these ones, especially in August, but the likelihood of that, let me tell you, seems very unlikely. The model guidance over the past 2 days hasn't really shifted much, continues to have it stay out here for the majority of the 5 days, and it should not become a hurricane. It doesn't look like it will, and you can see on satellite imagery that it is not looking all half that bad right now, so the prospect of it becoming Tropical Storm Jose, you can see with these cold cloud tops, does seem quite possible, but on the edge of the screen here is a monster, and her name is Irene. And Irene is going to cause a lot of problems for areas of the U.S. as dangerous Irene approaches. Stay tuned. We'll have continuous updates here as we continue to follow a very disaster-in-the-making type hurricane with dangerous Hurricane Irene bubbling there in the Bahamas. Looking to get a little bit stronger, it looks like, as the evening wears on. I'm Mike Naso from IPR. I'll see you next time.